The kingdom of Xandria basked under the warmth of the sun, its golden fields stretching as far as the eye could see. In the heart of its capital stood a palace carved from white stone, polished so brightly that it shimmered against the horizon. Within those walls lived the royal family, rulers of a land admired for its wealth, its wisdom, and its warriors. But among all its treasures, none shone brighter than Prince Akeem. Akeem was the youngest son of the great King Jabari. From the idea time he was a boy, the people whispered about him with affection. His smile seemed to ease the burdens of farmers. His gentle words brought comfort to widows and orphans. He walked among the poor without pride, listening to their troubles as if they were his own family. To the kingdom, he was not only a prince, but also a symbol of hope, the promise of a brighter future. Though he was raised in a palace draped with silk curtains and guarded by soldiers in bronze armor, Akeem's heart was never distant from his people. He visited the crowded markets, spoke kindly to children, and knelt beside elders in prayer. The poor said his voice carried a warmth that felt like sunlight after rain. The soldiers admired his courage, not for his victories in combat, but for the compassion he showed to those left broken by war. Even the king, a stern and battle-hardened man, often softened when Akeem spoke. Yet, not every heart in the palace glowed with joy at Akeem's light. Watching from the shadows was his elder brother, Prince Malik. Malik was strong, disciplined, and loyal to his duties. He had trained for years in the art of war, leading soldiers, in drills until his body ached and his spirit burned. He studied the laws of the land, advised his father on matters of trade, and carried the weight of responsibility that came with being the firstborn. Yet, for all his hard work, Malik rarely heard words of praise. The people did not sing Malik's name. They spoke instead of Akeem's kindness, his charm, his golden heart. In the great halls where noblemen gathered, their voices rose in admiration for the younger prince. Each time Malik heard them, a quiet bitterness pressed into his chest. The king, though proud of both sons, often compared them. "Malik, your strength is needed in the kingdom's defense," he would say. "But Akeem, your spirit gives the people hope." Malik bowed his head in respect, but inside his pride began to wither. In the silence of the night, Malik would walk alone through the palace gardens. The torchlight cast long shadows across the walls, and he sometimes thought he saw those shadows curl into shapes of serpents, watching, whispering, tempting. He felt invisible, as if his father saw only the crown meant for Akeem, and not the sacrifice Malik had made to uphold the kingdom. Akeem, unaware of this storm in his brother's heart, often reached out to Malik with affection. He praised his brother's wisdom in council, admired his leadership of soldiers, and offered to share the burden of royal duties. To Akeem, Malik was not just a brother, but a protector, someone he trusted with his life. But to Malik, each kind word was another reminder that his younger brother shone with a light he himself could not command. And though he smiled in public, though he embraced Akeem as family, envy slithered into his heart like a snake coiling tighter with each passing day. The kingdom of Xandria saw only peace and prosperity. The people danced in the streets and sang praises to their beloved prince. Yet beneath that harmony, in the quiet corners of the palace, a silent poison was growing. The chalice of brotherhood, once filled with love, now trembled with the bitter taste of jealousy. And though no one yet knew it, the seeds of betrayal had already been sown. The days passed in Xandria like the steady beat of a drum. Markets thrived, harvests were bountiful, and the people lived with joy under the reign of King Jabari. Yet, within the palace, shadows lengthened. Prince Malik walked the stone corridors with a heavy heart. He was the firstborn, the warrior prince, the one who had carried the burden of leadership since his youth. Yet no matter how much he gave, no matter how many battles he fought, the eyes of the people always turned toward Akeem. Everywhere Malik went, he heard the whispers. Prince Akeem visited the sick again today. They say the young prince gave his own cloak to a beggar child. Oh, how blessed we are to have him. These words fell like stones upon Malik's chest. He clenched his jaw, his fists curling at his sides, though he spoke no anger aloud. Still, the silence of his pain grew heavier with each passing season. One evening, Malik stood before his father in the council chamber. The king, surrounded by advisors, listened as Malik carefully outlined strategies for defending the kingdom's borders. His voice was steady, his ideas clear, his loyalty unquestionable. But when the council ended, the king's eyes turned warmly toward Akeem. "My son," the king said, laying a hand on Akeem's shoulder, "your compassion is the soul of this kingdom. You give our people what even armies cannot: hope." Malik bowed his head, but inside his pride bled. Hope. Always hope. Always Akeem. That night, Malik could not sleep. He wandered to the palace balcony, staring into the vastness of the starlit sky. His heart burned with unspoken questions. Why does Father not see me? Why must my worth always be weighed against Akeem's light? It was in this moment of weakness that a new voice found him. A tall figure approached from the shadows. Lord Zahir, the king's most cunning advisor. His face was sharp, his eyes like dark pools that reflected no kindness. He bowed deeply before Malik, though there was something mocking hidden in his smile. "My prince," Zahir said softly, "forgive me if I speak too boldly, but I have watched you. I have seen how hard you labor for this kingdom, and how little you are thanked for it." Malik's eyes narrowed. "It is not my place to seek thanks. My duty is to serve." "Duty," Zahir echoed with a bitter laugh. "Yes, you serve. You bleed. And yet, when the people sing, whose name fills their songs? Not yours, my prince. Not yours." Malik looked away, but Zahir's words slithered into his mind like venom. "The king," Zahir continued, "is old. Soon he must choose an heir. Do you truly believe he will crown you? No. It will be Akeem, the smiling boy who gives bread to peasants, while you carry the kingdom's true burdens. Tell me, my prince, is that justice?" Malik's silence was answer enough. His heart pounded with a storm he could no longer deny. Zahir leaned closer, his voice a whisper. "The kingdom needs a strong ruler. Akeem's heart is soft, too soft. Kindness does not protect borders. Smiles do not stop enemies. If he rules, Zandria will fall. But you, Malik, you were born to lead. Yet as long as Akeem stands, your father's eyes will never see you. His shadow will always cover you." Malik turned sharply toward the advisor. "What are you suggesting?" Zahir's lips curved into a smile that did not reach his eyes. "I suggest nothing. I only remind you of truth. Sometimes, for a kingdom to live, a brother must make a sacrifice." The words hung heavy in the air. Malik felt his stomach twist. He wanted to reject them, to deny the dark path laid before him. But deep inside, something cracked. For the first time, Malik allowed himself to imagine a Zandria without Akeem. A Zandria where he was the heir, the king-to-be, the one finally seen. The thought was bitter, shameful, and yet it glimmered with the promise of power. Meanwhile, far from the palace's dark whispers, Akim continued his days in innocence. He walked among the poor, holding the hands of hungry children, carrying baskets of grain to widows. To him, these acts were not duties, but joys. He laughed with merchants, prayed with soldiers, and eased the fears of mothers who worried for their sons in battle. The people adored him, but Akim did not see their love as his own glory. He saw it as a blessing he was meant to return. And so, while Akim's heart remained pure, Malik's heart began to split. Love for his brother wrestled against envy. Honor fought with ambition. Each night, the whispers of Zahir grew louder. Each day, Malik's bitterness deepened. He told himself he loved his brother, yet in the quiet of his mind, the thought repeated like a drumbeat. If Akim lives, I will never be king. It was a thought Malik hated, yet one he could not silence. And slowly, without realizing it, he began to believe that his brother's downfall was not betrayal, but destiny. The palace of Xandria glowed with firelight. That night, its golden halls were dressed for celebration. Silk banners draped from towering pillars, and bronze lanterns swung gently, casting warm light over 1,000 gathered faces. The great feast was for Prince Akim, the people's beloved son, whose kindness had strengthened the kingdom's unity and brought peace to restless villages. Musicians played soft drums and flutes, their notes filling the air with joy. Long wooden tables groaned under the weight of roasted lamb, bowls of rice, fruits dripping with sweetness, and goblets filled with rich wine. Servants moved swiftly, carrying platters, their steps echoing through the hall. Akim sat at the high table beside his father, King Jabari, and his mother, Queen Safiya. His smile was gentle, his laughter soft, as he greeted guests with gratitude. The young prince looked every bit the beacon of hope the people believed him to be. Beside him sat Malik, his older brother, dressed in fine armor polished until it gleamed. He held his head high, but inside his heart raced. Tonight, the choice he had long fought against would be made. Tonight, his brother's life would end. Malik's hands trembled under the table. For days, the words of Lord Zahir had haunted him. Sometimes, for a kingdom to live, a brother must make a sacrifice. Malik told himself it was true. He told himself the kingdom needed him, not Akim. Yet, even as he tried to believe it, his stomach twisted with shame. At the feast's center, Akim stood and lifted his goblet. "To Xandria," he declared, his voice carrying like sunlight breaking through clouds, "to our people, whose strength makes us proud, and whose faith binds us as one." The hall erupted with cheers. Cups were raised, laughter filled the air, and for a moment, all seemed perfect. But Malik saw only the goblet in his brother's hand. His eyes darkened. His fate lay within a single cup. Slowly, while others laughed and clapped, Malik reached for the small vial hidden within his robe. His fingers shook as he pulled it free. The liquid inside glistened like black oil, thick and deadly. He glanced around. No one noticed. Every eye was on Akim. His heart pounded louder than the music. His throat burned as if it too had been poisoned. Still, with trembling hands, Malik leaned over and poured the poison into his brother's cup. The dark liquid vanished into the red wine, leaving no trace. For a moment, Malik's breath stopped. His body froze. It was done. Akim turned to him then, his eyes shining with warmth. He touched Malik's arm and whispered, "Brother, tonight is our victory together. I could not have done any of this without your strength." Malik's heart shattered. The words were knives. Yet he forced a smile, nodding though his insides screamed. The music swelled again. Servants refilled goblets, laughter echoed, and Akeem, unaware of his fate, lifted his cup once more. Malik's eyes widened, his breath caught. Time seemed to slow as the rim of the goblet touched Akeem's lips. Akeem drank. The poison slid down his throat like a silent serpent. At first, nothing happened. He laughed, speaking kindly to a nearby nobleman. But then his laughter broke. His hand trembled. His chest tightened. A shadow crossed his face. "Brother?" Malik whispered, his voice caught between horror and guilt. Akeem gasped. His body swayed. The goblet fell from his hand, striking the floor with a sharp clang. The hall grew silent. Then came the cries. "Akeem!" The queen's scream tore through the chamber as she rushed to her son's side. The king stood frozen, his face pale, before kneeling beside them, his great hands trembling as they tried to hold Akeem upright. The young prince's skin turned pale, his lips blue. His eyes fluttered, as if struggling to stay open. Servants scrambled for water. Healers rushed forward. The music died, and the once celebratory hall drowned in chaos. Akeem's breaths came short and shallow, his body convulsed. Yet, in his final moments, his eyes turned to Malik. And there it was. Not accusation, not hatred, but confusion. His gaze was blurred, heavy with pain, but it still held the softness of a brother who trusted too much. Malik's mask of shock was perfect. He clutched his brother's arm as if desperate, shouting, "Help him! Someone help him!" But inside, his soul was collapsing. The poison that had burned Akeem's veins now burned Malik's heart. The queen sobbed, holding her son's head in her lap. Her cries echoed like thunder through the golden hall. The king, a man known for his iron will, wept openly, his tears falling onto Akeem's trembling chest. "Stay with us, my son," the king whispered. "Stay with us!" But Akeem's body grew weaker. His breath slowed. His last sight was his family crying over him, and his brother's face, blurred through tears. The sound of his mother's voice, broken with grief, was the last thing he heard before the darkness claimed him. And in that silence, while the hall shook with wails and panic, Malik stood frozen. To the world, he was a grieving brother. But in truth, he was the architect of this tragedy. His heart pounded with guilt, yet he forced himself to remain steady, even as his soul screamed. Prince Akeem, the golden son of Xandria, had fallen, and the poisoned cup had opened the door to a fate neither brother could escape. The banquet hall faded from Prince Akeem's sight, its golden torches dimming, as though a veil had been drawn between him and the world. The voices of his parents, desperate, trembling, breaking with grief, grew faint, as though carried away by a storm. His body felt heavy, yet at the same time lighter than air, as if something deep within him was being pulled free. Darkness surrounded him, not the cold, empty darkness of death, but a thick and living shadow that seemed to breathe, shifting like waves in a restless sea. Akeem tried to speak, to cry out to his family, but his lips formed no words. His body no longer obeyed him. Instead, there was silence. Silence so profound that even his heartbeat, the drum that had carried him since birth, had vanished. Fear clutched his soul. Was this death? Was this the end? He thought of his mother's tear-streaked face, of his father's trembling hands, of Malik's eyes filled with a strange, unreadable sorrow. He wanted to reach for them, to tell them he was still here, but they were gone, and he was alone. Then, a faint glow. At first, it was only a spark, a flicker of light far ahead, but slowly it grew brighter, like a fire kindled in the heart of endless night. The shadows around him pulled back, and the weight of fear lifted from his chest. Akeem felt himself being drawn toward the glow, not walking, not moving, but carried as though on unseen winds. The closer he came, the warmer the light became, wrapping him in a comfort he could not explain. His pain ebbed. His body no longer burned with poison. For the first time since the feast, he could breathe. And then, from the light, voices emerged. Whispers at first, soft as lullabies, then clearer, stronger, echoing through the space around him. Some were voices he recognized, the laughter of children he had played with in the palace gardens long ago, the wise words of old tutors long buried, the gentle hum of servants who had sung to him in his youth. They were calling him home. Tears filled his eyes as he was carried forward. The darkness gave way to a vast plain shimmering with silver mist. The ground beneath his feet was soft like clouds, yet real enough to hold him. A golden river stretched across the horizon, glowing brighter than sunlight, and beyond it lay towering gates carved of ivory and stone, their surfaces etched with symbols he could not understand. For a moment, awe replaced his fear. This is the afterlife. Figures began to appear in the mist. Some were vague, faceless shadows. Others were sharp and familiar. He saw his grandmother, who had died when he was a boy, smiling with warmth and beckoning him closer. He saw soldiers who had fallen in battle for Xandria, standing tall and proud, their armor gleaming. They welcomed him with open arms, their voices rising like a chorus. Yet as he drew near, he felt a strange hesitation. Something, or someone, was waiting beyond the gates, unseen but powerful, pulling him closer. The air shifted. The warmth dimmed. The voices hushed. And there, stepping from the silver mist, came a figure Akeem never expected. His heart stopped, if it still beat at all. It was not a stranger, not an ancestor, not a friend. It was Malik, but not the Malik he had just left behind, trembling in the banquet hall. This Malik's form was luminous, his eyes sharp yet sorrowful, his expression torn between grief and determination. He wore no armor, no crown, only a cloak of shadow and light interwoven, as though he stood with one foot in life and the other in death. Akeem staggered back. Confusion filled him. How could Malik be here? Malik is alive. Yet the vision did not fade. Malik stepped closer, his presence commanding yet broken. His lips did not move, but Akeem heard his voice echoing all around him. "Brother, forgive me." The words cut deeper than any blade. The light around Malik flickered, unstable, like fire struggling against wind. His figure shifted, at times solid, at times wavering. He seemed trapped between two worlds, his soul burdened by the weight of betrayal. Akeem's mind spun. Rage and sorrow warred within him. The betrayal at the feast, the poison that still burned in his veins, the collapse in his mother's arms. All of it pointed to the man before him. And yet, instead of vengeance, what he felt most was heartbreak. "Why?" Akeem whispered, though he did not know if the afterlife allowed sound. His question carried into the mist, heavy with pain. Malik's eyes lowered. His form wavered again. He offered no answer, only a silence more damning than words. The plain quivered. The golden river roared louder. The ivory gates pulsed with light, as though impatient for Akeem's arrival. The voices of the dead returned, urging him to step forward, to leave the burdens of the living behind. But Akeem could not move. His brother's image anchored him. In that moment, the afterlife was no comfort, no peace. It was a mirror held to his deepest wound. And as the gates opened slowly with a thunderous sound, Akeem realized that what awaited him beyond was not simple rest. It was truth. And truth, perhaps, would cut sharper than poison ever could. The ivory gates stood open, their light stretching across the silver plain like dawn spilling over a dark horizon. Akeem's heart quivered as he stepped closer, though his feet hardly touched the ground. The voices of the dead swirled around him, welcoming, pleading, warning, until their chorus became a single note, vibrating like the string of a great harp. Beyond the gates, the world changed. The mists gave way to towering spires of obsidian and crystal, reaching endlessly upward into a sky of shifting colors. Gold one moment, violet the next, then black as ink. Rivers of molten light snaked through valleys, their currents carrying whispers of countless souls. The air was heavy, not with death, but with judgment. A weight pressing upon Akeem's chest, forcing him to confront the raw truth of his being. He had no choice but to walk forward. At the heart of this strange realm, a great throne rose from the ground, carved of stone and shadow. Upon it sat a figure cloaked in robes that shimmered like starlight woven with smoke. Its face was hidden behind a mask of onyx, etched with lines that pulsed faintly, as if alive. When it spoke, the sound was not a voice, but the echo of eternity itself, filling every corner of Akeem's soul. "I am the keeper of souls," it declared, guardian of the passage, judge of the living and the dead. Akeem bowed instinctively, though his body trembled. He had faced battles, storms, even betrayal, but nothing compared to this presence. Vast, unyielding, older than the mountains of Xandria. The keeper's gaze pierced him through the mask. "Prince Akeem of Xandria, son of Jabari, son of Safia, betrayed by blood and carried here by poison's sting. Do you know why you stand before me?" Akeem swallowed. His voice cracked when he spoke. Because I am dead." The keeper's tone was steady, neither cruel nor kind. "No, you are not yet claimed. Your soul lingers between life and eternity. You stand in the crossing, a place of decision." Confusion swelled within Akeem. "Decision? I did not choose this path. I was taken—" He stopped, his breath shaking. The image of Malik pouring poison into his cup flashed before him. "I was taken by betrayal." The keeper's silence was heavier than words. Then, "Betrayal is a knife, but the wound is not the end. The wound is the beginning." Akeem's fists clenched. "He was my brother. He was my blood." From the shadows beside the throne, shapes began to form. Memories. Images of Malik as a boy running through the palace gardens, laughing as he chased Akeem through fields of tall grass. Malik training with sword in hand, standing protectively at Akeem's side during childhood games. And then Malik at the banquet, trembling as he tipped the poison into the cup. The visions surrounded Akeem like a cage. His chest tightened with anguish. "Why do you show me this?" he demanded. The keeper's voice resonated through him. "Because no soul passes without truth. You carry pain. You carry questions. The crossing demands you face them." Akeem's breath came in shallow bursts. Rage flickered in his chest, but beneath it, sorrow carved a deeper wound. "I trusted him. I loved him, and he gave me death." The keeper leaned forward, its mask glowing faintly. "Did he give you death? Or did he give you the path you were meant to walk?" The question struck Akeem like a blade. His heart recoiled. He wanted to deny it, to scream that Malik had stolen everything. Yet, here he stood, in a realm beyond mortal reach, face to face with the Keeper of Souls. Could this betrayal be more than the end? Could it be the beginning of something greater? Before he could speak, the air shifted again. From behind the Keeper's throne, a vast mirror of water rose, its surface rippling with light. "Look!" the Keeper commanded. Akeem turned. Within the mirror, he saw the banquet hall once more. His body lay lifeless upon the floor, his mother cradling him with shattered sobs, his father's hands trembling as he covered his son's chest with royal cloth. And there, Malik, standing above them, face carved in grief, yet his eyes clouded with guilt. The keeper's voice thundered. "The living grieve you, but their story is not done. Your brother walks the path of ruin, chained by his own deed. His soul is not beyond reach, not yet. What will you do, Akeem? Will you condemn him to shadow, or will you seek to understand the fire that burns him?" Akeem's entire being quivered. The thought of forgiveness was unbearable. The wound was still fresh, poison still burning in his memory. But to condemn his brother for eternity, was that the justice he wanted? Or was there something greater? The keeper extended a hand, palm like polished stone, holding two objects, a blade forged of light and a chalice filled with golden water. "One leads to judgment," the keeper said, "the other to mercy. But know this, whichever you choose will shape not only your fate, but the fate of your brother, and of the kingdom he now holds in trembling hands." The plane fell silent. The mirror rippled. The choice hovered like thunder in the air. Akeem stood at the threshold of eternity, his heart torn between vengeance and grace, his soul trembling before the Keeper of Souls. And though his hand trembled, he knew that the decision before him was greater than life, greater than death. It was the decision that would define his legacy. The Keeper's hand remained outstretched, its palm steady, holding the two objects of fate, the blade of light and the golden chalice. The silence of the crossing was suffocating, filled only with the sound of Akeem's own breathing. His eyes locked on the blade. It shimmered with terrible beauty, a promise of justice, swift and final. With it, he could cut the chains of his brother's soul, cast Malik into shadow, and see vengeance done. His chest burned with the thought. He remembered the bitter taste of poison, the betrayal etched into his brother's trembling hand as he tipped the cup. Rage stirred like fire in his veins, but then his gaze fell upon the chalice. Its golden liquid glowed with warmth, unlike the cold fire of the blade. It was not the glow of battle, but of healing, of mercy. It promised release, not for Malik alone, but for Akeem's own wounded heart. His knees weakened. He sank to the ground, his hands covering his face. "Why must I choose?" he whispered. His voice broke, carried away on the wind of this otherworldly realm. "Why must I be the one to bear the weight of his sins?" The Keeper's voice came, deep and unshaken. "Because it is your wound. Only the wounded can decide whether to pass the pain onward or end it." Akeem closed his eyes, and in the darkness of his mind came memories, not of poison or betrayal, but of childhood. He saw himself as a boy, chasing Malik across the palace gardens. Malik had stumbled, scraping his knee, and little Akeem had wept louder than his brother, begging the servants to bring help. He remembered the nights they huddled together during storms, whispering stories until they both drifted into sleep. He remembered Malik lifting him upon his shoulders during festivals, letting him see the fireworks above the kingdom walls. For a moment, Akeem felt the warmth of those days, a truth buried beneath envy and ambition. Malik had not always been the man who poured poison into a cup. He had once been a brother. But then another vision struck him. Malik's face at the feast, shadowed by guilt, lips pressed into a thin line as he watched his younger brother collapse to the ground. The horror in their mother's scream, his father's trembling hand reaching for him, the betrayal of blood. Akeem's heart roared with conflict. Forgiveness felt like weakness. To forgive Malik meant to let his crime go unpunished. To wield the blade would bring satisfaction. But at what cost? He turned toward the mirror of water again, the one the Keeper had raised. The banquet scene rippled before him, Malik standing over their mother, who clutched Akeem's lifeless body. The older prince's face was pale, his hands shaking. He was not rejoicing in his victory. He was crumbling beneath it. Chains of guilt were already tightening around him. The Keeper's voice echoed gently, almost like a whisper now. Your brother is already his own jailer. Do not mistake punishment for peace. Akeem's breath hitched. He thought of his mother's eyes, the grief that would consume her if she lost both sons to hatred. He thought of his father, weary with the burden of kingship, desperate for one son to rise with wisdom. And then he thought of his own soul. If he chose vengeance, would he carry the poison of anger with him forever? Would his spirit be trapped in bitterness, unable to ascend into light? He rose slowly to his feet. His body trembled, but his voice steadied. If I carry this hatred, then Malik has taken more from me than my life. He will have taken my soul as well. His hand reached toward the keeper, not for the blade, but for the chalice. The golden water shimmered as he lifted it, its warmth flowing into his hands like sunlight breaking through clouds. He raised it to his lips, though he did not drink. Instead, he whispered into its glow, "I forgive you, brother." The words tore from him like flesh from bone. But as they left his lips, a great stillness swept across the crossing. The blade of light vanished into dust, scattering like broken stars. The mirror rippled, showing Malik again. But this time, the chains around his soul shivered. The keeper's voice thundered, filled with power and reverence. "The wound is ended. The chain is broken. In forgiveness, you have freed not only your brother, but yourself." The chalice dissolved into golden mist, its glow wrapping around Akeem's body. For the first time since the poison touched his veins, he felt no pain, only light. He closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face. He did not know what would come next, whether he would return to life or journey fully into eternity. But he knew this: his heart was no longer bound by hatred. His soul was free. The light of the chalice faded, but its echo did not. Across the divide between life and death, Akeem's whisper, "I forgive you, brother," struck like a thunderclap within Malik's soul. In the banquet hall, Malik sat frozen at the table. His hands, still stained with wine, trembled uncontrollably. The celebration had long ended in grief, the laughter silenced by the cries of the queen, the broken roar of the king, and the sight of Akeem's lifeless body carried away. Yet Malik felt no relief, no triumph. Instead, he felt chains tightening around his chest, invisible but unrelenting. That night, as he lay in his chamber, he could not sleep. The walls of stone seemed to close in around him. His heart raced, his skin grew clammy. Every time he shut his eyes, Akeem's face appeared before him. Not as he had seen him collapse, but as he had seen him as a boy, smiling, running through the palace gardens, laughter echoing like sunlight. Then the vision would twist, and the smile would fade. The boy's eyes would fill with sorrow, and a single whisper would echo in the darkness. "I forgive you." The words burned more fiercely than condemnation ever could. Malik gasped, bolting upright in bed. "No," he muttered, clutching his head. He would have welcomed curses, flames, even the torments of hell. But forgiveness? That was unbearable. It was a mirror, forcing him to see the rot in his own heart. Days passed, and the kingdom moved in mourning. The queen wore white veils, her cries echoing through the palace halls. The king withdrew into silence, his crown heavy upon his head. The people gathered in the square, laying flowers at the gates in honor of their fallen prince, and Malik, though no one knew his secret, walked among them with the weight of a ghost upon his back. At council meetings he faltered. At feasts he could not eat. His eyes grew hollow, his hands unsteady. Servants whispered that the older prince looked haunted, like a man chased by shadows. One evening he stood alone in the royal chapel. The torches burned low, their flames flickering against carvings of ancestors who had ruled with honor. Malik fell to his knees before the altar, his breath ragged. "Why do I see him?" he cried into the silence. His voice cracked. "Why does he haunt me?" The shadows of the chapel shifted. He thought for an instant he saw Akim's form standing at the edge of the light. But the prince did not glare or curse. He only looked at Malik with eyes full of sorrow. And something far worse. Compassion. Malik broke. His body shook as sobs tore from him, harder than any he had wept as a child. His hands struck the cold stone floor. "I killed you, Akim," he whispered. "I killed my own blood. I took from the world its light. And you forgive me?" The vision lingered, silent, but the weight of forgiveness did not lift. It pressed harder, demanding a choice. Malik's spirit trembled on the edge of two roads, one that led deeper into ruin, where guilt would rot him until nothing remained, and another that led to confession, shame, and the faint hope of redemption. As the night stretched on, Malik's sobs filled the chapel, echoing against the stone. The burden of his brother's mercy left him with only one question, one truth he could no longer escape. Would he surrender to ruin, or grasp the painful path of redemption? The throne room of Xandria stood silent, its golden pillars casting long shadows across the marble floor. The air was heavy with grief, for the kingdom still mourned its fallen prince. The queen moved through the palace like a spirit, her veils damp with tears. The king, once a man of fire and command, now bore a silence that weighed heavier than any crown. It was into this silence that Malik entered. His steps echoed down the hall unsteady, each one dragging like the pull of chains. The courtiers watched with wary eyes, for the elder prince's face was pale, hollow, and marked with sleepless nights. Some whispered that grief had broken him. Others wondered if guilt gnawed at his soul. At the base of the throne, Malik fell to his knees. The force of it cracked against the stone, his body trembling as he bowed his head. "My king, my father." His voice was hoarse, ragged from nights of weeping. "I come not as your son, but as the bearer of truth." The king's tired gaze lifted, his eyes narrowing as he studied the figure before him. The queen, seated at his side, stiffened. Her hands clutched the folds of her veil, as though she already knew what was to come. Malik drew a shaking breath, his words spilling like poison from a wound he could no longer hide. "It was I who placed the venom in Akim's cup. I who stole the life of your youngest son. I who betrayed blood and crown alike." Gasps rippled through the hall. Courtiers recoiled. The queen cried out, her body folding as though struck by a blade. She collapsed against the throne, her veil slipping from her face as tears streamed freely. The king's face did not change at first. He sat frozen, like a statue carved from grief. Only his trembling hands betrayed the storm within. Malik pressed his forehead to the ground, his tears staining the stone. "I deserve no mercy. I deserve no crown. Let my blood repay the debt I owe. But before judgment falls, know this." His voice cracked, and he lifted his gaze just enough for his father to see the ruin in his eyes. "He forgave me." The room fell still. The king leaned forward, his voice trembling. "What do you mean?" Malik's chest heaved. "Akim's spirit came to me in the darkness, not with curses, not with vengeance, but with mercy. He said, 'I forgive you, brother.' And those words burn me greater than any flame. They haunt me, father. They strip me bare." The king's eyes shone with tears, his hand gripping the arm of his throne. His voice broke, the weight of grief finally spilling free. "Oh, my sons! One lost to envy, the other to death. And yet even in the afterlife, Akim's heart shines brighter than the sun." The queen sobbed openly, her body shaking with the pain of hearing her murdered son's compassion. Malik's voice faltered as he whispered, "I beg for no crown, no pardon, only your judgment. Exile me, strike me, cast me into shadow, but let it be known that I bear my brother's forgiveness, though I do not deserve it." The hall was silent. The courtiers dared not breathe. All eyes turned to the king. Slowly, the ruler of Xandria rose from his throne. His shoulders sagged, heavy with the burden of justice and love. His voice trembled like a man breaking under the weight of two truths. Malik, son of Jabari, son of Safiya, you have taken what can never be restored. No crown shall rest upon your head. No throne shall bear your name. For this crime, you are exiled from Xandria, cast into the wilderness to wander as a shadow among men. Malik bowed his head, tears streaming freely. The judgment was harsh, yet not death. The king had chosen a punishment that would echo Akim's mercy, a life of wandering, haunted by forgiveness, forever remembering the brother he destroyed. As guards moved to lead him away, Malik whispered once more, his voice cracking, "Akim, I will carry your mercy until my last breath." The queen wept. The king turned away, his tears unhidden, and as Malik's footsteps faded into the distance, a strange peace settled over the throne room. Not joy, not healing, but the fragile seed of redemption planted in grief. Far above, in realms unseen, Akim's spirit rose into light. His forgiveness had become his legacy, shining brighter than his crown ever could. He was